Okay, so we got a big inspection today. We're doing our rough plumbing, electrical, and framing. So if we get that, then that's gonna open up a lot of work, but he's gonna be looking at a lot of stuff. So we'll see how it goes. So I was gonna talk a little bit about how we passed rough-in inspection, which includes rough-in framing, plumbing, and electrical. So this might be helpful so that you can be prepared if you're doing your own rough-in, or if you've got a plumbing, electrical, HVAC contractor. Just a few things that might help you to be alert to and make sure that as the work goes in, the installation is clean and you don't end up with more problems when the inspector arrives. So let's go ahead and turn around and I'll show you a couple of the things that you want to look for. Okay, so here we are in the laundry room, which is basically where we set up all the testing. And so here on the gas line, you want to pump this up to 15 pounds of pressure, and we're using Ward Flex and Ward Flex fittings. So it's a little bit better than the CSST or the Flex that you'll get at, like, say, Home Depot or one of the big box stores. But as you go ahead and you run that, just make sure that your connections are all clean, especially when you cut that, and be very careful because it will cut you. It's very sharp. And then as you go ahead and run it, now this is it's on the Ward Flex instructions. It's also, I believe it's part of the California code. However, our inspector says it was not necessary. So it's a number 6 solid copper, and it basically mounts to each fitting. So let's see, walk you around, show you a couple others. You go up into, say, the T there. So we've got that. Now that all runs back to your electrical panel right here, and it ties into your grounding. And basically what that protects you from is if there is a lightning strike, and this gets electrified because it is steel, stainless steel. What can end up happening, that electricity can't get out, and so it will blow a little hole, and then you end up with a gas leak inside of your wall. So as I said, the inspector did not require that, but we went ahead and installed it on each of them. I believe that the minimum requirement that a city might put on it would be connecting it as close as possible to the gas meter, which in our case would be this guy here, because that's where we're stubbing out and attaching to the gas meter. But running that back and tying it into your main electrical grounding system, which in this case is our electrical panel with the OOFR grounding. So it's right here. It's going to be attached right into this grounding bar. Okay. So that's on the gas. Over on the water, now we did a water test. A lot of people you see on YouTube will use air, and I think they're both good. You can actually use a connection like this, so it just connects right onto your threaded water line, but it allows you to plug in your compressor, right? So you can pump it up. You want to get this pressure up to whatever your standard house pressure is. So right now you can see that our house pressure is 45, because that's the pressure that's on the house. Can't put any more pressure, water pressure in the line than that, but as long as it's holding, that's what you're really looking for. And then on all the hot water, using PEX, you want to make sure that you put this insulation. And so, you know, it's pretty inexpensive, but you got to run that, and you might, where you're attached here, on all your bracing, See up through the ceiling? That's all the hot water. Okay? And then it runs down. All your hot water has to be insulated. And then it also, let's move you over here, where you hit your hot water heater, which ours will be a tankless outside, 6 feet, 5 or 6 feet of the cold water needs to be insulated as well. So you see that there. So here we go from 3/4 inch PEX. Runs right back here, 90s, or sorry, at T's. So it runs from, right here is our main water line, comes in, 90s to the hot water heater, and then the hot water comes back, right? So once the hot water comes back here, now you've got your 90 into the ADU, the hot water, which is insulated right here. Cold water's right here. And so come in, we hit the toilet, we hit the shower, we hit the sink, we hit the laundry room, we hit the kitchen, and then over here we have an exterior shower. Okay? So another thing that you're going to want to be, he's going to be looking for are these striker plates, nail plates. So you see the WardFlex plate right here. They want to make sure that you get those covered. And it's good that your electrician can drill his holes 1.25 inch minimum, right? So if you hit it dead center in a 2x4 wall, you really don't need the plate. However, you know, depending on your drywall guys or what type of screws people end up putting into the wall, you might still hit one. So as a safety precaution, you put all these plates. Now, if we go over to the line set on the hot water, or sorry, the air conditioner. So these guys had to notch. And if you look how much you can notch a 2x4 bearing wall, I believe it's 1 inch, so it's basically nothing. So anywhere that you notch into the wall, you're gonna need to use the Simpsons strapping system. And so on these small, I think less than 5 inch notches, you can use that CTS or CST 28, and that basically goes just on the top plate. You can put it on top or the bottom. It just needs to be on one plate. And then I've got the striker plate over that as well. So it kind of protects that line set. I'll show you an example of a notch in a non-bearing wall. So here we just use striker plates, but you're not required to have the Simpsons strap over that. Now here in the garage, we also ran a line set here, so we can either at a future date install a mini split unit in here and condition the garage. Also have a heater in the garage. So we just have the one CTS 28 strap there. But over here you see we got all the line sets. This is where it drops down, pops out the wall. So Simpson recommends the RSP 28, I believe, which needs to be on the top plate and the bottom plate. Okay, so you see that? So that allows you to span the entire 14.5 inch bay, whereas this one only allows you a notch of about 5 inches. So keep that in mind. And then you have these striker plates protecting water and gas there. Those are all the things that he's going to be looking for. He's also going to be looking for, you know, the size holes that you drill through your rafters and through your top plates, through your studs. Another thing that we had to upgrade, you can see this, originally we had run the horizontal vent over here, and he says it needs to be 6 inches above the overflow line. So if you have a sink that's 36 inches, then you need to be at least 6 inches above on any horizontal if you go 90. Okay, so you see how we got a 90 here. So 6 inches above. We had to move that also in the bathroom vanity because everything we had was lower. It was about 24 inches. So now we're at, I believe, 42 right here. And then here in the where we went horizontal, because we didn't have the option of putting a 90 above our overflow here, then he allowed us to put a 45. Okay, so just keep that in mind if you're putting any horizontals in your vents, that you make sure that they're high enough above the overflow. Something else that he called out, which on an earlier inspection, so we were able to change it. This anchor bolt here was not in the center. It was too far out here. So you can kind of see this one here, right? So we're a little bit off center. You can use these slotted washers, and ideally you end up with this. This one's sticking out a little bit, so we'll probably just take a grinder and zip that off there so it doesn't obstruct the drywall. But this one, the plate would have been sticking pretty far out. So he recommended just go ahead and cut that anchor bolt off, re-drill in epoxy. And also we added one there, an anchor bolt, because that's just a little weird step down in the framing for that garage door. This garage door is actually going to move out to here. I'm going to throw this one away and we're going to put a new one in, but that's the old garage door from prior to construction. So just make sure that your hold downs all look good. You know, your anchor bolts, we have a minimum of 4 inches from the end and a maximum of 12. So from any splice. And he goes around looking at all that. He looks at the hold downs to make sure, you know, that they have all the screws and that the bolts are in. So this is our sub panel in the garage. We did not have our circuit card filled out, so he asked me to do that before the next inspection, or for the next inspection, which will be insulation. So I'll get that in. I'm going to put in a little 6x6 junction box here so that the LB from the other side can tie into that, and then we can pull our number 2 feeder lines into this panel. Make sure that, so here we go from PEX to copper. Make sure that you have everything strapped down, and make sure that you're putting copper on copper. You don't want to put, you don't want to mix metals, because you'll get electrolysis, which will end up corroding your metal, and then you'll end up getting a leak. So here, got more striker plates. Just trying to think. These are your evaporation lines for your mini splits. So make sure that you just make sure everything looks really clean. Make sure that your Romex, you know, is all, you got to be stapled down 12 inches from the box maximum, and just, you know, make sure that there's nothing hanging down. You can see everything is fixed and strapped. So here we got more evaporation lines. In the bedroom we got a little 6,000 BTU mini split head going in here. Another thing that he's going to look for is that your windows are installed and the height for egress. They got to be, I believe, under 44 inches. So that allows a fireman to climb into your window. So he wanted to see both of those in. You can see we don't have our front door on, but that's not required for the rough-in. And you can see we got a little bottle of soapy water here, because as you do check your lines, so your pressure is going to drop. It can drop because of the temperature of the air. If it gets cold, it's going to drop. But if it's dropping too quickly, then you need to go around and you spray your fittings, right? Spray all your fittings. Another over here. And make sure that you're not getting any bubbles. If there's, this is just about a tablespoon of soap, liquid soap in here. But if you have even a small leak, you'll see it foaming up. If it's a big leak, it'll blow a big bubble. But if it's a small leak, it'll just start foaming up, and you'll see that foam grow. So, just because your gas line is holding enough to pass inspection, he's going to come and he's going to see that, oh, you got pressure, you got 15 pounds of pressure, and he's going to press your button and be like, oh, okay, you got air in it. I know you're not faking it, but just because it's holding enough to pass inspection does not mean that it's not leaking somewhere. So if it is, fix it. You don't want any gas leaking into your walls, into your unit. Another little thing here, so sometimes you have these clean outs, it's just a threaded ABS clean out. And when you do the static pressure test, that's the water that I sprayed on it. You do the static pressure test where you fill your vent lines up with water. It's actually quite a bit of pressure, and so you'll find that these things leak. And so it's always a good idea, don't just thread those in and then think that they're good and close it up with drywall, because if you do get backed up in here, or this water that's coming down here, you might start getting a leak into your wall, which is going to turn into mold and other problems. So make sure that you put Teflon tape on it, like 10 to 12 times around, and then put some pipe dope on it as well on top of the Teflon, so that way you make sure, and then test it, fill it back up with water and make sure that thing's not leaking, because you don't want that leaking into your wall after you're closed up. So I think that's about it. Just make sure before you call for your inspection that you go through each of your disciplines. Go through the water lines, make sure that you have your insulation on your hot water, make sure that you have no leaks. So run that pressure test with the water, and you can connect, just make sure that everything's capped off, but you can connect anywhere that you want to install one of those hose bibs. You can even install it on your copper anywhere, and make sure that it's holding pressure. And it's actually nice if you do it with water, you can walk around and look for any leaks, let it sit overnight, and then make sure that you have your insulation on your hot water lines 6 feet from your hot water heater. Make sure that you have your cold water also insulated. Make sure you're in your gas line, that you're holding 15 pounds of pressure, and that if you have any leaks or even slow leaks, just because the pressure drops does not mean you have a leak. It could just drop from the change in temperature of the air. But if it is dropping, make sure that you go around and do the soap test on every joint and look for bubbles. And if you don't see any, come back in 15-20 minutes and see if any have grown, because a slow leak can grow in about that amount of time. And then with your drains, just make sure that your vents are all high above the overflow line, and anything that's horizontal, anything that's a 90 needs to be 6 inches above your overflow. And then also make sure that you don't have any leaks on your threaded ABS, because those are some of the things that I caught on our pre-inspection and were able to get fixed, and that's the way we're able to pass inspections. Anyways, thanks again for tuning into these videos. I hope you find some of the information helpful, and if you are contemplating building your own ADU, or even if you're going to general it and hire it out, these are some of the things that you want to be educated on, so that you make sure that you're getting good installation, and also that you're not running into problems with the building department and your inspector. So feel free to post any questions down below, and I will do my best to get back to you as quickly as possible. Thanks again.